Today on Scott++, something I should have done a long time ago that has drastic implications for tag share. Let's find out. Alright, welcome. For those who are just joining, over the last few months I've been building a web app that lets users curate and share awesome stuff that they find online and automatically keep it up to date. I'm pretty happy with the app so far as a proof of concept, but it may be time to put this on hold. I finally did some competitive research, and this is something I should have done from the very beginning on day one, but I looked for other bookmark managers, and I found, for example, MyMind and also Raindrop.io. Both of these look like great bookmark managers. They do a lot of the same stuff that I wanted to do with tag share in terms of using ML for auto tagging and giving previews of the links that you save. Now, neither MyMind or Raindrop.io really tackle the social aspect that I wanted to hit with tag share in terms of the sharing and getting that information out there to be consumed by other people. And that's the side I'm starting to refer to now as a recommendation platform. But neither have I. Thus far, I've been focused on building kind of the bookmark manager side of things, and I haven't really drilled down into the recommendation aspect. What problem does it solve? Who is the target audience, right? Really, what is the essence of this app that I'm building? And until I can figure that out, it doesn't make sense to keep going just building a bookmark manager that already exists. So over the last few weeks, I've been doing a lot of hand wringing. I thought I could maybe just sit down and think my way through the problem and find the essence of what this app wants to be, but I find myself just kind of thinking in circles and not really making any progress. So I'm trying to pay attention to that and notice the signs when maybe it's time to take a step back, give some space for the universe to provide some guidance. Fortunately, a new project has appeared that I have the opportunity to work on. This is something that is time sensitive, so it might be a little stressful trying to get this done in the next couple months, but hopefully that's a good amount of time to let tag share simmer. Now I will be showing that project in future videos on this channel, so stay tuned. Since we're putting tag share on the shelf for a few months, I thought it would be a good idea, instead of developing a new feature, to go ahead and do a pass on fixing some bugs and some code cleanup. As we all know, the current version of the app was jank in all kinds of places, so I've done a pass to kind of improve the UX a bit. Now we finally get to the meat of the video, where I'm going to go over the fixes and improvements that I made, and then at the end dive into the code of how exactly it was done. Without further ado, first thing I did is I added the title and an icon to the tab there. That only took 5 minutes, but I think it really adds to the experience instead of having the standard like React app thing there. Next up, the sign-in page. So I didn't mention this in the previous videos, but you might have noticed in the background, whenever I sign in, this happens, which is terrible. How do I stop it? So now on the updated version, if I sign in, you'll see that really quickly there's a loading thing that comes in which prevents you from like double clicking and trying to sign in twice, and then also all that loads up without this endless loop of reloading the gallery titles. So that makes the sign-in experience less insane. Another thing I fixed is in the previous version, when I would add a site, it would pop up here, and then it basically just sits here forever until you manually refresh the page, which is obviously less than ideal. So now in the updated version, if I go ahead and add a link and submits, it automatically grabs it right away, and it keeps trying until the data becomes available from the info service. That's about it for the fixes. I kind of wish there was more to show off today, but that took me long enough. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the code. For those of you who are just here for the project, this is your jumping off point. This is going to be a lot of React stuff, so here we go. So walking back through what I did and how I implemented it, on the auth page, one thing I added was this set loading. So when the user presses the submit button, we set loading. Where do we do that? Here. And then after the response comes back, we return loading to be false. Then I use the loading obviously above the sign-in form, but then also I disable the forms themselves when the user is loading. All right, so next let's dive into this infinite fetch loop. I'll kill that right away, and take a look at why that was happening. So the flow is that once the user signs in, the data he gets back is all the collections that he needs info for, and then it sends another request requesting all that info. And then as that comes in, it saves all of that data as key value pairs to this save gallery data. Now this save gallery data is a custom hook I wrote, use state map. It is effectively use state, but it wraps a map and lets you set individually key value pairs. That state technically belongs to the highest level app component, and then it's just passed down to anything that needs it. I do this so that as you're browsing maybe your collections, maybe other collections, once you download the data for a collection, you don't need to re-download it again. Now the problem came up, the old code for this use state map hook was basically just trying to access the existing data, add the new value that you're passing in, and then set it. The problem is the way React works, if you're doing this outside of the render loop, you don't actually have access to that value. So the data, in this case, which it was trying to add a value to, was always returning as an empty map. So every time as the code is marching through the different collections and trying to set that data, it was effectively obliterating all the other ones. And now because the component, it would look through and see if you had any missing collection info, and if you did, it would send another request. So as those kept obliterating each other, it just went in this infinite cycle. So how did I fix that? React's use state hook, you can pass in the full new state, but you also have the option to pass in a function to transform the state. And so this way, you're sure to grab the previous state and then do that proper mutation. So I just updated my use state map to use that option, passing in a function that mutates the state, and that fixed everything up. Then finally, how did I get this auto fetching to work? Well, first we need to understand how this works. As I submit a new item to my collection, that effectively just saves the URL, okay? And then there's a separate service that right now the client is calling. Once I have all the URLs that I'm missing info for, it goes to a separate service to request that info. So previously, when we were adding an item, it just saved that to the new collection info, but then it just left it there and there was no call to now fetch that new item. What I've done now is every re-render of the item section, it checks if there are any missing items, and then it automatically does a fetch. Now, another thing to consider is that sometimes that info service is overloaded. I do have like a domain throttle, so I had a problem before if I was trying to scrape YouTube like 5 times really fast, YouTube would start returning errors instead of giving me that data. So I added a domain throttle to the URL info service. So what that means is that maybe the client will send a request to the service and the service will say, hey, ask me again in a minute, 5 minutes, whatever, depending on the backlog. And so what I added to the client is that after it gets the response of the item data, similar to the login page, I added a fetch pending. So to say, hey, I'm loading, so don't load again. And so now once we get the response, if I still don't have all the items, it triggers a 1-second delay, and then it releases the pending state, which will again check if there are any missing data, and if so, send another request to try to get that. So that pretty much covers it for the tech side. Again, if you feel you want me to go deeper into the tech or less, let me know. I'm still trying to figure out how this all works and what is valuable content for you. So as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time when we dive into the brand new project. Yeah. All right, now I guess we got the outro.